Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I am your host, Jim Nettles, and, well, we have repeat offenders here for this week. So let's see who is coming in to bring in some new stuff on that to-be-read pile. So, Jenny, you're up first.
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series. I also write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. And tonight I write reviews and essays. And tonight we're going to be talking about a big book of the reviews.
Layla?
Hi, I'm Layla Dorine. I write LGBTQ fiction and romance, heavy on the rockers, the shifters, the bikers, and what I'm here today to tell you about, my daddy's littles and pets.
So, for those of you who may or may not know these two, and if you've ever watched the show before, I don't know how that's possible, so we're going to skip some of that fun stuff. So, Jenny, since you're having that little foray into essays and reviews, what motivated you to put this one together? Was it just so you could make it a tax write-off and count the word count on doing the movie reviews, or...
No, actually, it's a long roundabout route. I got suggested, this is when we were still living in Phoenix, I got suggested by another author who remained nameless, though I have my suspicions, but since I have never confirmed, I'm not going to say them out loud in case I'm wrong, to join a podcast he no longer had time for, and that was Slice of Sci-Fi. And so I was on that. It was a pod and video cast. And we met in the studio every week and reviewed things and talked about things. And for a while I was doing comic book reviews. I would get the comic books and, do the reviews. And that was fine. And that went up on It's Comic Book Day and a couple of other places. And all of a sudden we started getting movies. And they brought on a couple other reviewers as well. And so we'd have like the little round robin of who got what movie and everything else. So I tended to get a lot of the spy dramas and thrillers. I got a lot of the real life stories, comedies, things like that. I had to avoid horror. In fact, there was one very funny moment when I'm like, ooh, I want that movie. And everybody stops. We're on a Zoom call. Everybody stops and goes, Ginny, you realize that's horror, right? Just because there's two hot guys, just because Charlie and Tom Hiddleston are in this movie does not make it horror. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that movie. So
I'd have been the one that said, oh, yeah, Ginny, go take that. Put that on your...
Yeah, no, they wanted a good review, not as I run out of the theater. So, I started reviewing Sci-Fi. They had a spin-off sister program called Pop Culture Geeks, and I started reviewing for them as well. And then two of the guys who had been on the podcast split off and started their own called Two Gay Geeks. And it was funny because in all the reviews that we've done up to this time, I'm like, so is, anybody read my books? And I was like, oh, I don't think they're our thing. I'm like, they're science fiction. And they're funny, and there's lots of action and adventure. And no one would touch them. It was like, you're an author, we refuse to read you. And so the guys from Two Gay Geeks spun off, and finally, I don't know what finally convinced somebody related to this, they picked up Touched by an Alien, and they loved it. So they had me on their podcast. They do reviews of mine, and then they also started getting movie reviews. So I also started going reviewing for them. And then we moved to Atlanta, and we're Southwesterners. We're originally from the Los Angeles basin, and then we were in Phoenix. It doesn't rain often in these areas. And so we get to the Atlanta metro, and it's raining constantly, and we are trained as Southern Californians to not leave the house. You don't leave the house when it rains in the Southwest, okay? You just stay and watch the weird stuff fall from the sky and hope it's over soon, right? We also don't have storm drains that are capable of handling big weather because we don't get it. So there's always flooding and everything else. So we spent many nights and days in the first year we were out here not leaving the house. And so we ended up watching a lot of Turner Classic movies. And so I started doing old movies, new reviews for TG Geeks. And then we expanded on also stuff that we do Christmas and all this sort of thing. So I have tons of reviews that are done. And Slice of Sci-Fi shutters, Pop Culture keeps shutters, and Too Gay keeps shutters due to illness in one of the members or the founding members. So I'm sitting here with no one to review for anymore, and just so many reviews sitting in. So I'm now you've heard all about the horror thing. I am the still living founding member, past president and current co-chair of the Atlanta Horror Writers Chapter. And you ask yourself how I could write it because everything scares me. So writing horror is really easy. And we do our Christmas holiday party at my house. And so we were talking about movies. I was waxing rhapsodic about The Man Who Invented Christmas and to one of our members. And he was like, oh, and we're talking about it. And I said, oh, it's one of my reviews. He goes, well, how many reviews have you done? I'm like, oh, tons. He goes, well, how many? I said, oh God, at least a book's worth, maybe more. And he looks at me and goes, you should really put those together and make a book. I'm like, you're right. So I checked with Ginger Blue and they were like, sure, yeah, we need filler. Go ahead. And anything, just, get it into shape. Please don't make it, have your categories make some sense. And so that's how that was born. And I'm really proud to announce that the filler book, landed in number 1 in 3 categories on Amazon prior to release, let alone after release. So it actually worked out very, very well. So that's the long path that got me here.
So Layla, hopefully, based on what we started talking about before this, it's not as long of a path that got you. Oh, wait, sorry. That's the wrong joke. No. What are you bringing in for this new release?
Well, this is a little Campfire Blues, and it is part of the every year for this is be the 3rd year, we have done some kind of a Pride themed summer release. So the first year, your book was centered around a Pride parade, and I had Painted Love, and then which was Pride Pet Play, and it was a fireman daddy and 2 pets. Last year, I had the Pride Cruise, and it was a daddy, a little, and a pet. And that was so much fun because the destinations kept changing, and, they're on a cruise ship, and there's all the cruise ship activities. And of course, I had to make it a kinky cruise. So, that was Seafoam and Saltwater Taffy. This year, A Little Campfire Blues is Pride Camp. And so all the characters are at camp, and there's, the campfire sing-alongs and all the activities, and it's around a big lake, and there's, all the kind of fun things you can do as an adult camping that you couldn't do when you were camping as a kid. And these are 3 friends from, childhood through high school. They had started dating in high school. They had a split up. And this is the first time at Pride Camp that the 3 of them will be in the same room together for like 8 years. One of them, the musician character, he left. He didn't even walk the stage for graduation. He just took off. There was a big blow up one night. Some words were said and feelings were hurt. And he left. He didn't tell the other 2 goodbye. He just poof. And then, a few weeks later, one of the other ones ships off for the Coast Guard. The other one goes off to college. And now they're all kind of have gravitated back together because the one who went to the Coast Guard, he's out. He went back to their hometown. That's all part of his backstory. He was a rescue swimmer and he was injured on the job. So he is now the aquatics director of the town pool and the high school swim coach of the team that he used to be on. So he's back home. The other one's coming home to be the theater director. And the musician is still, 3 hours away, living in Portland. This is all set out in Oregon, which is, been an interesting place to visit several times. And I decided I'm setting it there. It's so beautiful, so many outside lakes. So you've got these 3 who over the years, they were experimenting together when they were in high school. And as they've been adults, they've experimented and kind of figured out where their tastes are, and they are going to meet Daddy at Pride Camp because one of them is a pet and two of them are littles. And the fun of these three characters already, and I am only like a fifth of the way through writing this book. It's a fast moving book, but the snark just in the introspection, let alone like they're finally in the same room together right before I came on. And the snark is already there. Like one of them's giving the other one crap about being stubborn and trying to carry too many things in from the car and making a joke about how, remember the last time you tried that? You tripped going up the stairs. It takes a lot of talent to trip going upstairs. And he's muttering about how, the most stubborn ass person shouldn't be the one telling someone else they're stubborn. And he's like, well, that stubborn people are the only ones that can recognize the signs, and others, they're going back and forth like they have never been apart. And they really haven't, because that's the thing. Each of them has been keeping in contact with Roman, who's the one who went into the Coast Guard. They've been video chatting, texting, and emailing Roman for years. The two that had the big blow up have just never spoken to each other. So Roman knows they're both going to be there. Roman set all of this up. They're all sharing a cabin. And so he stalled so hard because the Axis wanted to take the raft and just go float on the pond immediately. Didn't care about even putting the groceries away. There's a big, it's actually a huge lake, and it's there and it's shimmering, and hardly anyone's arrived, and he wants to go get on the lake. And Roman is like, nah, we got to put the groceries away first. Let's put the clothes inside. Let's be responsible. Yes and no. He wants to be responsible because he knows that Ezzy is almost there. And when Ezzy gets there, he knows that these two have said for years they would like to be able to resolve it, squash it, fix things, etc., and have never been able to because they're both too damn stubborn to be the first to reach out. So he reached out for them. Now we're at Pride Camp, and shenanigans are fixing to ensue.
Now, as we're talking about a cabin in the woods, because right now I'm sitting in a cabin in the woods, what I'm picturing is a cabin in the woods, or maybe, you need to have Campbell out in the, never mind. We'll go to...
No, we are picturing, so every few years I stay down in South Mississippi at a cabin by this little pond that I swear there's fish in there. They can't all be snapping turtles. I know I'm not just catching snapping turtles every flipping year. There's fish in this pond. I digress, though. It is a rustic 3-bedroom cabin with a full kitchen, a living room with a couch and a flat screen on the wall. It's for rent. We rent it for 3 weeks when we go down there. And it is this amazing place. And so every cabin at Pride Camp is based off of this one. And the sister cabin down the road where we've stayed a few times too, which is they're just phenomenally rustic cabins with the wraparound porch, the rocking chairs, the grill station outside where you can throw meat on the grill or cook it right over the campfire. So my Pride Camp story is set up around a cabin like the one that I stay in. And I've got tons of reference pictures from the last trip. It's just amazing.
There's a chateau where I come from.
It's Mississippi. So that's called chateaus. No.
I popped the car. I can't say chateau properly.
You just did.
Not the fancy French way.
You know, chateau. That's how it's pronounced.
Chateau versus chapeau.
There we go.
So, Jenny, so what's one of your favorite reviews out of Media and Me?
Oh gosh, I have a lot. I started strong. The way I categorized it, I've got these are classics, really? These might be classics, really, and these are classics, really. So these are classics, really. Turner Classic Movies has a very, very deep vault. Not all of these movies are classics. In fact, most of them are awful. I start strong with I do my, the Beatles are not afraid of this band. Mrs. Brown Got a Lovely Daughter, which was a Herman Hermits Herman's Hermit, sorry, biopic movie, just like Help or A Hard Day's Night. Okay, only not just like Help or A Hard Day's Night. It's awful. It's ludicrously awful. It's so bad. And I had so much fun writing it. The worse the movie, the more fun and funny my reviews are, of course, because if the movie is terrible, I can just have a field day. If the movie is good, not so much. So I went back to Phoenix for a mini Gini Con a couple weeks ago, and I was reading from this book. And so I read the Herman's Hermits one, and everybody loved it. And the next one is Ice Station Zebra, aka Ice Station Boredom. And then I'm like, okay, you guys, I was reading for 2 hours, and this was the book I started with, right? So I'm like, do you want one more? And they're like, what's the next one? I'm like, Disney's The Black Hole. And like the whole room goes, you gotta do it. So all of the ones, and these are classics, really are pretty funny. I really quite like my review of Cats because I enjoyed it. I basically review the other critics on that movie. And so I got to have a lot of fun. So that's really, there's a couple others. Zoo Warriors is a perennial favorite. The Phantom is a perennial favorite, that I put in. So I have a lot of funny ones, that I use. But really the starter, because I knew in order to make people want to read this, you really got to hit them with the hilarious ones. So that's why I set it up. And I had to do all the setup. I want to mention there was no help, editor help. But I have those. I have double and sometimes triple features, and the one that features Charade and 2 other movies is also good. So, but if I'm going to pick one that really I outlines why you should read this book, it would be the first, the opening one with Herman's Hermits, where I literally say I wanted to tell you about this in order, but it would seem to you like I didn't know what that meant to tell you in
Categorizing.
No, not categorizing. It's I'm blanking on the word. It begins with a C. But it's like it's not continual, but it's
Cacophonous, more than likely. But
no. It's something that's like it's a straight line. Continuity.
Oh, a continuity? Yeah, usually that's called an error.
Order. You would think I didn't know what it meant. This movie is so disjointed. It's so terrible and just so perfect to review because it's just awful. And most people will never have seen most of these movies. All of the classics, for the most part, are really old. So most people won't have seen them. So it's a reason to either go and see them for the laughs or avoid them. But there's some that were great that I was not expecting to love. So like Bachelor Mother, I really approached that movie with a lot of trepidation. That's Ginger Rogers and David Niven. And it is freaking delightful. It became one of my all-time favorite movies. So much so my husband would buy me the DVD and we watch it. It's from Christmas Eve to New Year's Day time frame in the movie. And yeah, we always watch it in the Christmas time, but I'll just I feel like Bachelor Mother tonight. So that was my most delightful find out of all the reviews was how much I loved that movie.
So Layla, let's dive a little bit deeper into the particular crowd of fellows that we're hanging out with in this particular book. So tell us a little bit more about the guys we're going to be hanging out with.
Well, you've got Ezzy, who is he was a theater major who is now going to take over the town's community theater. So he's going to be doing all of the programming, lining up the plays, getting all that together. He also is a playwright, so he's writing them. And it's a subject I always love to come back to because I spent a lot of time around a playhouse. I've done some playwriting and stuff. So it's always kind of fun to go back to those workshops and those roots. Then you have Roman, who kind of like I mentioned, he was a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. He was the high school swim champ. Well, he was literally the swim champ pretty much all through school. And I took that from my own background. I swam on swim teams from the time I was 7 all the way through high school. I've done the 1.5 mile swim for Saipan. I've done ocean swims, pools, long course, short course. You know, for years that was literally my sport, and so you swam every day. You were in the pool. In fact, it was, one of my things was I was either going to be a marine biologist, knowing I can't spell half the science words, can't even say the daggone things, but I love being in and around and near the water. And, just so he's kind of a lot based on me and my love of the water and swimming. And then you have Axis, who's kind of another piece of the things I love. He is a guitarist. He is no longer in a band. His band fell apart a couple years ago. They had all left home together, on that night, got in a van, left their little town, went to Portland, trying to make it big before heading up to Seattle. They did okay locally, had some things go wrong. So now he's playing the coffee houses and, doing that kind of life, still living over a bar and, playing downstairs when they need him to. And those are the three childhood friends. Those are the three that, I started with the story and I'm like, but I need something that's going to bring them all together because the three pieces weren't fitting. I was storyboarding and I was, drafting and I'm writing notes. I'm getting little scenes and I'm like, but it's not coming together. And then the more I learned about the characters and who they were, and I'm like, oh, it's because they don't have daddy. Daddy is Mackenzie, or Mac, as he will be called through most of the book. And Mac is also a former musician. He is very former because his band made it big and crashed and burned. So he is working a loading dock currently, which I kind of drew his job inspiration from the years that my dad spent working on the Ocean Spray loading dock out in Massachusetts, where I grew up. So Mac works on a loading dock now, fiddles with the guitar every now and again, and he's really going to be kind of that guiding stability force that gets these three past. Really, it's the two. The one has never really had an issue. He didn't have time to pick sides because one stormed out the door. He said one or two things to the other one and walked after him, and they try not to speak of that night during their video chats. It's one topic that they dance around, they leave alone. It's all going to come to a head one night when it's just the four of them and they have someone there who can kind of help put everything into perspective of not only why the conversation that took place, but what was the real force behind what prompted Axis to say what he said to Ezzy the night he left. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun with maybe 3 serious scenes, which is rare for me.
Gotta have a little fun with it. Gotta take it a little bit now and then. So Jenny, and I've written film and TV reviews and other reviews over the years in some of my misspent youth. But here's one of my big questions.
Mm-hmm.
After watching all of these films, good and bad, and hitting on The Black Hole, which is one of my personal favorites. I did go back and rewatch it. I saw it in the theater as a kid. I love that movie. I recognize how god-awful it is, but it is worth it just to see
wrong,
Anthony
but I love
Perkins.
you anyway, but you're so wrong.
It's worth it to see Anthony Perkins.
No, it's not.
See, I love seeing the look of terror now.
There's nothing worth it about that movie. That movie is god awful, and they had the money to make it great, and it's god awful.
Well, apparently there's a rumor they keep talking about wanting to do a remake. So,
please God no, please God no. They already have the Star Wars universe, which was this whole movie's whole point was to try to compete with Star Wars. They had the money for it. They did not stick this landing.
You do know that apparently, and I have not vetted this, so I could entirely be wrong, but Troma Films put out a thing that they've been acquired by Disney, so which means that Toxic Avenger is now a Disney prince.
That's awesome. That's awesome because Converter is a Disney princess. And that made me super happy. So,
but anyway, now that I'm getting off track, not that that ever happens.
Not really, because I have a review of the TV version of Rocky Horror, so in this book. So go on.
So, well, and we've got pictures of, anyway, that's a whole different story. That's a different story. Um, of when we gave a copy of the fairy book to, damn it, Brad. Oh, sorry. Anyway, and having watched all these movies, having written all these reviews, what did this teach you about storytelling?
But not everybody's good at it. There are certain, yeah, it's even in the reviews. When something is, this is serviceable, okay, that's a lot of these might be classics, really. They're serviceable movies. They did what they were supposed to do versus the ones that are just ridiculous or just bad. It taught me that some storytelling is really, really poorly done. And that adaptations are not good. Ice Station Zebra, that's an example.
Have the book.
Yes, and I'm sure the book's great because there's a lot of tense stuff in this movie, or that would be tense if you could tell who was who, and you can't because it's up in the snow and everybody's got everything, but like even their eyes are, you don't know who's talking, who's doing what. There's no tension. It's just boring. And Rock Hudson is the star, and that man was a charisma machine. He had charisma with every leading lady and most of his supporting male characters. He had charisma with villains. He had literally the man. I got to see him in a revival of On the 20th Century, and the man had charisma coming off the stage. Okay. There's no charisma in this movie. It's like they said, hey, everybody, before you go in front of the camera, we want you to walk in front of this charisma sucking machine. It's just going to suck all your charisma out of you, and then you can go film. He has no charisma with anything. The only way you know it's Rock is he's the tallest. Literally, that's it. If you've seen a movie in the last 50 years, you know who the traitor is. If you haven't seen a movie in the last 50 years and you're shocked by who the traitor is, you really don't get out enough. There's no tension. There's a scene where the sub takes water, but you're not tense because A, it's midway through. So you know they're going to make it somewhere. But also you can't tell who's who. This is probably a great scene in the book. Probably really, really tense because the author can put you in the heads of whoever or be describing the situation using words that make it tense, as opposed to just here's a whole bunch of guys in uniforms that you can't tell who's who in doing things. People fall into a big crevice in the ice. Again, should be so taut and terrifying. You don't know who fell. You don't know who's helping them. You don't care. Again. So book adaptations need to be done better than this one was. There was a lot of, well, this could have been great if only they had done X, Y, and Z. So some of it was, yeah, some of these are, I'll never, ever make that mistake. Thank you for highlighting this for me, movie. But because movies and TV are visual and writing is not, I already knew that a lot of the things that were in there that I wouldn't like what made Ice Station boredom so boring, were the fact that they couldn't get the same tension in as the author had done, and they probably should have done something different, but didn't. Or maybe this was different from the book because I haven't read it. And seeing the movie doesn't really, the only reason you'd want to read it is to prove to yourself that the book was better. And I can just promise you the book was better. Nobody needs to test it. But there were some, especially the ones that were serviceable. It's like, what is wrong with this? What could have elevated this to something more? And it's usually either an acting choice that the director allowed, or demanded, or the script demanded, or it's just some weird directing choice where you're like, why did you do that? Then they're the ones that do not age well. If you liked The Goodbye Girl, never watch it again. Ever. Ever. Never watch it again. Because it will retroactively destroy your enjoyment, because that is a cringe-worthy movie. Oh, it's so bad. And everything that we liked about it first run, and I was in the theater for it first run, is now just nauseatingly, almost vomit-inducing cringeworthy. There is, other than the theme song, which somehow manages to remain timeless, the rest of this movie is just this horrifying retro look into what we all thought was okay in the early 80s and really wasn't in pictures. So it was awful. Then there's some Pillow Talk. Pillow Talk has all the same cringe. Oh, even more cringe. However, it also has Rock, Chemistry Machine Hudson, and Doris freaking Day. And together they were movie magic. And I hated that I still loved this movie because it is just the most, it's everything is cringe and yet it works because it's Rock Hudson and Doris Day. So it also taught me that, wow, who's leading really matters. So, AKA, you better have charismatic leads that in your stories that people want to spend time with, because you can make a lot of mistakes if people just love your character. So I guess I would say that's a lot of what I learned. And also some directors are awful and should never be allowed to direct again. And others are great and should be doing it all the time.
So Layla, on your side, right? You get, because a lot of the time you come back to these universes over and over again and create new stories. What have you learned about coming back and forth into some of these shared universes and these annual projects and things like this? What have you learned kind of about your own storytelling by coming back to some of these kind of themes and coming back to these themes of storytelling year over year?
Well, it's funny you asked that question, because while writing chapter 1 and getting into Axis's bandmates, I realized, holy shit, one of Axis's former bandmates is my Rocktoberfest character for the book I'll be writing this October. So my co-writer and I are planning a joint Rocktoberfest book, and I'm like, I had this character in mind, just an image of him, and I knew nothing about him. And as I started writing chapter 1 of Campfire Blues, I'm like, this is his old bandmate. This is his old band. I'm going to have a chance to learn about him before I ever get to where we're even doing notes on Rocktoberfest. I can work on his story now, bits of it. So last night, I ended up sitting up and writing his whole backstory. Like, I know so much about this character now just from writing chapter 1 of this book, because it just seems like there are little side characters that are mentioned in all the stories, and eventually they do get their own books or they pop up here. And when I look back, even in my early storytelling, I think it's because I came to novel writing from an RPG background. We wrote characters for an online wrestling game, and we would have 6 people on multiple way calling, setting up. And remember, this is wrestling. So we were literally doing what they would do we were all huge fans. So we're booking the cards. We're booking 4 or 5 months in advance. How is this storyline going to play out? Who is actually going to, all right, who's going to be our heel in this one? Who's our face? Is anybody flip-flopping in here? And we would plot these stories out for our bookings. And then over the years, and I played for 17 years, you faced each other multiple times. Character growth and development of the characters happened because you have been writing their storyline in promo for 17 years of some of these characters' lives. So when I wrote my first book, and the first 11 chapters were taken straight from the game. They were all old storyline promo pieces that I'd fleshed out into my story arc and then expanded. And then I wrote a second book based off of it. And characters in that story became a third book. And then it was like, okay. So I stepped out of that world briefly and wrote like a paranormal where aliens crash landed in this field. But I'd written it based on this little diner that I'd worked at in Tennessee and the people I'd worked with. So, of course, one of those characters pops up waitressing in another story. Okay, she's a little older now. She's like BFFs with one of my characters. And every story in the universe that I've created, there are only two universes. There is a contemporary and there is a paranormal. But the threads are continuous in every single book. If you read them, you will find characters sprinkled here and there from different books. So I'm really only writing in two worlds, my paranormals and my contemporary. Even my hedgehogs, they will meet one of my Comet Lake wolves later down the line, and those stories will intertwine. So I've learned that when I create a world, I just can keep adding to it. I don't have to keep creating all these, okay, I need a separate world for the bikers. I need a No, Des, my rock star, has ridden with my rolling jokers. And it is awesome when he will show one of the pieces of ink that he got from the club president. And it's just that little moment where my readers are like, oh my God, there was a Des sighting, or oh my God, there was a Gemini sighting, or holy crap, Rogue is in this book. Yes, Rogue will be at Oktoberfest this year. Hint, hint, if you've read Gemini's Rogue, show up for Beyond the Stars because he will be there.
One of these days you're going to have to create the preferred reading order.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It's ever fluctuating.
Right.
It is ever fluctuating. I am literally writing a book now that I won't release for at least 2 years, so it's being written very slowly. And the reason it's being written very slowly is it can't release until the Comet Lake series is done, because it is a different wolf pack. And so it is a continuation, but not in the same place. You're still getting wolf shifters, but now you're at another pack. And you will travel there with one of the wolves from Comet Lake. So all of these little ideas, I have notebooks full of how all the characters and where they're going to meet back up again. So I know who's popping up where, even into what's going to be planned, what's doing for next year.
Well, we've got more stuff. Everybody's stacking up on those to be read piles from you guys. So let's make sure that everybody knows where to find it. So Jenny, where can everybody find you? And of course, find the book.
GiniKoch.com. And if you want to join my free newsletter, hook me up. You can do so from the bottom of most of the pages on my website. I'm all over Facebook, X, Twitter, Blue Sky, Pinterest. Medium Me and every other title right now that I have out active is with Ginger Blue Publishing. And it's actually becoming easier to just go to the Ginger Blue website, choose your format, choose your distributor, and click from there. Particularly for the Alien series, which is re-releasing from Ginger Blue. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are deeply confused. And so if you want to get stuff, please just go to Ginger Blue, and that's gingerbluepublishing.com to get that. And Media Me is available now in all the fine distributor places.
Layla?
Well, you can find me at Layla Dorine at Wix.com. You can find me at Rainbow Lyrics and Mellow Mushrooms. You can somewhat find me on Instagram these days. I haven't quite made it back to TikTok. And you can find a Little Campfire Blues come July, but for right now, you can find Prayers for the Prickly at all major booksellers. It is live, and yeah, that is my hedgehogs. So check out some hedgehogs, check out some rockers with Echoes of a Muted Song in like 15 days, and then visit us in July and check out the campfire.
And you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, and of course here at ConTinual. And go stack up those to be read piles. We'll see you again soon.